Mirko Manzoni, and we're very pleased to have you here with us. Thank you for coming. We have heard you speak about your experiences in Mozambique to our students on several occasions, but realised that we really would like to capture this also on camera and have an archival account of your experiences. So, Ambassador, tell us something about your experiences in Mozambique. What exactly happened? What was your role in this process?
Well, first, I arrived in Mozambique in 2014 when it was the end of the mandate of President Gebuza. The situation, I would say, was relatively good in Mozambique. It was considered to be, let's say, considered by the donors a good student in a way, doing everything right and everything in line with rule and regulation in a certain way. And just a few months after that President Nyusi was appointed as new president, it came up the issue of, like out of the blue really, it was not something that we were expecting, it came up the issue of the famous hidden debt, this debt of 2.2 billion USD that was contracted by the government of Mozambique with two banks in principle, one a Swiss bank, Credit Suisse, and the other one was VTB, was a Russian bank. So that situation in reality was in a way the trigger of everything that what happened then in terms of negotiation, mediation for Mozambique. Because the beginning of 2015, President Nyusi tried to get in touch with the leader of the opposition, Lakama, that was at that moment in the bush. They had a meeting, if I'm not wrong, was February 2015, and we were happy to see that the new president was ready to open a dialogue finally with Renamo, because it's true that starting from 2012, the situation it was never a conflict that was finished in Mozambique. It was always restarting, resuming, depending. It was a low intensity conflict in a way. In 2015, this initiative of Nyusi was very well welcomed by all of us, and we said, okay, fine, everything will go better. But in parallel, there was this issue of the debt that came up. We were all surprised. Mozambique, that before was considered to be the best partner for donors, started to become to consider to be not how to say not loyal, so the donors they turned their trust completely in the other side, and the finances of Mozambique they started to go very bad, because a number of donors that was considered a group of donors called the G19 decided to reduce, first of all, the budget support. For Mozambique, budget support was very important because it was liquidity, was the money that was used to pay teachers, to pay basic services and so on. So in very few months, the situation from very good deteriorated to very bad in Mozambique. And what happened to the initiative of Nyusi? The initiative of Nyusi to discuss with Lakama turned also very bad, because at that moment, Nyusi was not completely controlling the whole state in a way, and particularly the Secret Service and the army, they were not necessarily in favor of resuming a dialogue with Afonso Lakama of Renamo. And it happened that Lakama was falling in an ambush, was almost killed, and after that, Lakama decided to leave definitely Maputo. He went back to the bush in Gorongosa and decided to stay there in the mountain, finish up to the mountain. And he resumed really the conflict, in a sense that he reopened. In reality, we found out after years that the military base of Renamo, they were never closed. This was one of the problems of the peace agreement of 92, because the process of 92 was never honestly closed for a simple matter, nothing special, not political, money. Simply, the United Nations, I had really a nice discussion with Kofi Annan in Geneva when I started to enter in this dialogue with Renamo, and he was telling me, please try to not do the mistake we did. And I asked, what you did as a mistake? The mistake is that we started a process and we were not capable to keep the financing going on, and we were obliged to stop. So it was, he explained to me, it was quite amazing. In 94, I think, basically the United Nations, they ran out of business, out of money, and the process was totally stopped, so ended. And of course, lots of expectation, they remain there simply, but not fulfilled. La Cama in that situation, of course, lost lots of trust. He was not trusting anymore the international community because what was promised was not done. See, all the process of reintegration and so on at that time was just unaccomplished, and therefore La Cama never really dissolved. He kept. It was quite amazing to understand, and after that, people, they were staying in the military base for years. You know, we designed people that they were 27 years in a military base where the family was 80 kilometers far. So in reality, the military base of Renamo, they remain in standby for a very long time. And therefore, La Cama was always saying, I'm a general and I'm a politician. Because he had really, in reality, he had really an army that was not so many people they knew. And also the government was not totally aware about. Also when we closed the old military base that they were supposed to be 16, in reality they were 16 plus 2. Because at the very end of the process, they told us, oh look, this one is not one, it's 3. And we found two military bases more. But yes, the situation in 2015 was that one. La Cama went back to the bush. The situation in Mozambique, politically and politically, financially particularly, was a bit a catastrophe. And Nyusi was still a president that was not solid, too strong. So that was a situation where really donors, they could have played a different role, maybe better, but in reality, the donors, they started to put lots of pressure on the government. And in 2000, beginning of 2016, the group of donors that was called, as I said, G19, was the group of general budget support, decided to push, to force the government into a mediation with La Cama. Because it was true that additionally to the crisis for the Eden debt, what La Cama started, he resumed really the conflict in a more intense way, in a sense that he was really attacking police station, burning police station, attacking cars in the street, and the strategy basically of Renamo was to cut the country in two, north and south, and blocking the corridor that was Beira, Zimbabwe, that was very important for many reasons. And I remember that Zimbabwe was complaining, of course, saying you have to do something because that corridor is important to us as access to the sea. So because of that relation, don't forget that was also quite a strange situation where you had these military groups of Renamo attacking, but at the same time Renamo was in the parliament. It was anyway the second party in the parliament, so it was quite a strange situation. Quite unique, I would say, in the world. And at that moment, what happened was that this group, this G19 group that was very important for the survival of Mozambique, decided to impose a negotiation to the President Nyusi by using the budget support. It was really saying, you know, I remember I was, at that time I was a member of that group, and I can tell you that it was strange. I was called in a meeting once. I was not, you know, as Switzerland, we were not member of the European Union. These 19 people, at the end of the day, they were countries that They were mostly from Europe and the United States, and I think Canada and so on, but I don't remember exactly the all members of the, but there was also Switzerland, and what we were a bit, let's say, alone in that group of 90 because we were not the United States, we were not Europe, and so on. So what happened, it was that there was an agreement among the Europeans that the negotiation needed to be imposed by cutting the budget support. But that was already concocted in a way before without informing me directly as Switzerland that it was the only one remaining. So they called a meeting, I remember it was probably was in May, I should check my notes, but it was in May probably 2017. And in that meeting, they put on the table the decision that we needed to vote. In general, the budget support was like that. We needed to vote, but the majority will win. So we needed to vote something that was put on the table, but I was not informed. And that decision was because of the frame we have as budget support. We are asking the government to initiate a negotiation with Renamo. And if not, we will cut the budget support. So, was for me I was quite surprised. And I remember the ambassador of the United States asking me, "But Mirko, were you not informed?" Well, I said, "No, I mean, you just said, call a meeting, I'm coming, and this is on the table, so what do you want?" So they started to vote, and of course, as Switzerland, I voted no. I said, no, we will disagree on that because it's not the way we are normally used to do, budget support and dialogue. It's not linked directly, independently on the fact that there was, in the frame of this budget support, there was a sentence saying, it was the underlying principle, we were calling that, the government should keep good relation with the opposition. But from using that sentence and cutting the budget support, that was very far, for me at least. And I remember the chairman of the group, that was a Portuguese ambassador, was asking me, "But Mirko, you don't want to consult your country before voting?" I said, "No, in my passport there is written plenipotentiary, so I can't vote today without consulting anybody, but I can tell you that my government will disagree on that procedure." So the vote was massive, was 18 against 1. And I remember that I understood that the situation was quite sensitive, and I asked clearly to mention in the minutes, that is the position of Switzerland, we disagree. But then the question went ahead, of course, the majority decided, and the budget support was conditioned to that dialogue. And that was the beginning of this famous process that maybe you know as Avenida process. It started like that. The Avenida process started under the threat of cutting the budget support. Then I don't know, I'm not a teacher of mediation, but what I learned in my career is that it's not the best way to start. That was the beginning of that process. So we, of course, as you can imagine, we were not called to be part of that process. We were a bit the black sheep at that moment. And the process started with a quite complex, I would say, setup with more or less, I don't remember because I was not really directly involved, but then my colleague that then worked with me in the other process, Nia Sangrachka, was involved in that process, representing two mediators. But the setup was really strange in a sense. There were, let's say, I would say 10 mediators probably, and then there was the two parties that they were represented by two small commission of 3 and 3 people in a room. But you have to imagine a room like this one, where you have these two parties sitting there with 30 international, 30, not 13, 30 international, that they are all mediators and facilitators. I don't know, was a quite strange setup where I understood that then the party, they didn't felt really very well comfortable to speak about sensitive issues in front of all these people and so on. So anyway, the process was led by the European Union, and there was inside the mediators, there were different people appointed by the two parties. There was former President there were 2-3 former presidents of African president. There was Jonathan Powell, former chief of cabinet of Tony Blair, that was sent by Tony Blair because President Nyusi was asking Tony Blair to support. And in the other side, there was also a number of people appointed by Renamo, but really quite a strange situation. And the process started, I remember, I think it started in July 2016, announced by Nyusi as a new dialogue, and went ahead till December 16, if I'm not wrong, when they left Mozambique. And that process was really one of the reasons why we then step into the process, in the new process, simply because the situation was not moving. The two parties, they were not feeling comfortable in discussing their problems, and they were not coming to a solution simply. I remember the present Prime Minister Benvinda Levi, that was at that time a legal advisor of President Nyusi, discussing with me in August, telling to me, but you know, Mirko, it's complicated when you are in front of so many people and you have to discuss for the destiny of your country and so many people. She said, she compared a situation that was quite funny for me. She said, it's like if you have something and you go to the doctor and you would like to discuss only with the doctor, but you have all the assistant there. So, and you have to discuss something, but who will speak in front of all these people when it's something so personal? You know, say mediation is discussing about the future of your country is very sensitive. You don't discuss in front of all these people. And myself, in that discussion, I said, look, I'm sorry, we are not part of that dialogue. So I had a discussion with Benvinda Levi, that, as I said, at the time was a legal advisor of Nyusi, and she was asking me how we can sort out this. It was August 2016, before going to the conference of the ambassador. And myself, I said, look, Switzerland as a country, we are not involved in that process. But as I said, don't want to consider myself an expert in mediation, but what I can tell you is that in general, it's difficult to enter into a process and fix the process. It's not like fixing the car. It's not like that. So we can help you in many things, but you cannot ask us that we are not welcome into the process to come and fix the process. I said, I see the situation, and I say, I cannot believe that the country supporting now that process, they will welcome Switzerland, come and fix the mess. I doubt. I said, look, whatever will be, I said, if you really need or you want the support of Switzerland, without being formal, but we have a process to do, it's just very simple. Send a letter to my government asking for good offices, and then we can sit and see. That was just a discussion like that. But then things went ahead, and I had really regular discussion with Mia Sangrashka. And one day, myself, honestly, till that point, I had no idea who was really Jonathan Powell, to be honest. I knew that who was in the press, but never met him. And Nia, one day, she said to me, can we meet with Jonathan Powell? He's leaving to London, but we had a session of mediation. And that mediation was also very strange for me. It was, led by Mario Raffaelli, that was in the past also involved in the process of '92. But they had session, 1 day session, for example, 1 week session. The session was of 1 day. At the end of the session of the parties and so on, himself as mediator was going out and making a statement, which was quite strange in a sense, because first, in general, in my opinion today, I would say better that the parties, they are speaking, the mediators stay in the back and relax. This is my way to do, but it was a bit strange, because by doing this statement every day, the parties, what I understood them, the parties, they were very much under pressure. It was like really running behind, basically, a solution that was not coming. And parties very stressed, this statement continues coming out, everybody was frustrated. Anyway, discussion with Nelson Grasher said, let's meet with John, and John, I would like to ask you a few questions. And in a very short lunch before Jonathan left again to London, we had a discussion, and Jonathan Pablo was asking me, Mirko, what do you think about what's going on? I said, Jonathan, lots of respect, but if you ask me, honestly, I feel that it's really quite a mess. It's really quite a mess, because there's so many people, you know, there are too many cook in the kitchen, basically. It's impossible to come out with something, you know, it's not very discreet additionally. And I said, look, but this is, I don't want to offend anybody, but I would do differently. I said, just that. And then I was asking me what you will do and so on. I said, look, my way to do it is, you know, also as a country, Switzerland, you know, we grow up as diplomats that in our mindset is to be discreet, to not appear, to be silent. And I said, this is our way to work in our mediation. We don't want the press, we don't want to know today what we are doing. We would like first to achieve a result, then maybe somebody will speak. And then I explained to him how I was seeing, more or less, the setup of a mediation, not that one, but a mediation in general. I say, this is the way I see things working, but that one is not working. And then he left, he said, thank you so much. Then I would say it was, this was 30 of September 2006, and I remember very well because then we wrote a paper that was called the 30th of September paper, basically. And something like 10 days after, I remember that Nielsen Grachka again come in the office, and for the whole afternoon she was bothering me, insisting, Mirko, Jonathan Pablo called, and he would like that we write down what was said at the restaurant. And I said, okay, we can, but I said, I don't have time now. I said, okay, I have other stuff to do. And so the day was passing, and Nia was continuously entering the office. So she was at the embassy. She was not, but she was in the embassy. They knew her. So after a while, she was so pressing and pushing. Saying, Nia, what is my return in that? She said, I will pay you the dinner, but we have to sit and write. And we sit. We were in front of the laptop, the two, writing this summary of what was said. Simply, really, it was a paper, very simple, describing how we basically. Honestly, it was quite interesting because it was very simple. It was just the layout of what should have been a process in a way, and that was the paper that then was proposed by Jonathan Powell to President Nyusi. And in that way, we got involved. It was not really, we were not pushing to be involved as a country, but it was not, I would say it was not just a country involved, it was a team that then was chosen by President Nyusi. It was at the beginning, when President Nyusi accepted the paper, they came back, then I say, look, the condition remained the same. Letter, good offices, otherwise as a country we cannot. Nia and Jonathan, maybe they could, because they were individuals. Myself as ambassador, I said, I cannot get involved if I don't have a mandate. So they sent this letter, and then my government responded positively. And in that way, we started, we could have a budget, we could started to implement basically what was written in that paper. And today I can tell you, reading that paper is still valid and can be used for, was so simple because then we could go for dinner.
And how did the whole process begin? What was your first steps?
Yeah, then that paper was just proposing the following. It was proposing to have two parallel tracks, basically. One that was public, with two commissions that they were, let's say, declared, really. The press knew that the two commissions that were created. One was what they call it Military Affairs Commission, that was dealing with the problem of the combatants, of the people in the bush, and that's that way. The second commission was what we call it the Decentralization Commission. That was the one that was supposed to deal with the question related to how to share power in Mozambique. This was basically the problem. The problem was the inclusion, how to share power, who will manage the provinces if I win the election. What is basically the new, let's say, how we manage this country. That was What was not at that moment discussed, or what was not the plan, was the question that was negotiated then after. It was the pension for combatants. That was another negotiation that happened after, but it was not in that paper. So the second part, the second track of that, the famous paper of 30 September was the back channel. And the back channel was the effective mediation in reality. Because the reality was that decisions, they were not directly taken by the commissions. The commission, they were instructed through the back channel of what need to be done. So the back channel was just a group of 4 people. At the beginning we started 4 people and then we ended only 2. But at the beginning it was Nia Sangrachka, Jonathan Powell, Eduardo Namburete, that today is the ambassador of Mozambique to Algeria, and myself. And I would say in that group, it's not that I was the one taking over the lead, but I was in a way the only one accepted by both sides. One mediator was, of course, Eduardo Namburete, appointed by La Cama. Jonathan and Nia, they were more representing in a way President Nyusi, and myself, I was the only one in between that nobody knew, so I was neutral in a way in that sense. But anyway, that one was the back channel, and we started, we had a first meeting with the president of Renamo and leader of the opposition in the bush. It was the 15th of November 2016. But it was in the bush, of course, because La Cama didn't want to come out. President Nyusi was very concerned and scared, honestly, because we decided to go without any protection. There was no way to do in another way, in a sense. La Cama was ready to welcome us, but he was not ready to come out. So I don't know how you would like to do, but they said, he's inviting us there. I remember President Nyusi saying to me, but I cannot protect you. Are you sure you will? Say, but look, I remember having answered, maybe it seems to you a bit stupid as an answer, but I said, but Excellency, I cannot believe that you call the mediator in the bush and you kill him straight. Cannot be. I said, there should be some, when you enter into something like that, I'm not saying that you need to be a bit brave in a way, but at the end of the day, if you are called, there is an interest, and I cannot believe that the interest is straight to create a problem. You would like a solution. La Cama was not at that moment when he decided to meet us in the bush. It was basically years that it was not, nobody knew where he was, but at the same time, nobody was meeting him. He didn't want to meet international, no ambassador, nobody. So my first reaction was, let's try. I cannot imagine that the guy will shoot us straight. And I remember having listened once to Sergio Vera de Mello saying more or less the same sentence when he started the mediation in, I don't remember where, in Vietnam or something, saying exactly the same. If you don't take any risk, there is nothing. And so we started like that. We traveled to Gorongosa. At the beginning was like a black hole. You have no clue. Also, I remember Eduardo Namburete, that was appointed by La Cama. When I asked him, but your boss said that we have to go there. Do you know where we are going? No. So if you don't know yourself, how we can? And then really we were, Eduardo was not giving us any information because he had no information. Jonathan was coming from London, Nia from Kenya, myself from Switzerland. The advantage is true, and the 3 colleagues, they say the only one that had any clue exactly how to move in that context at the end was me, because I was former ICRC. And I had my mission, they were in Congo and so on. So in ICRC you learn this kind of things, how to do, how to rent a plan, how to walk in the bush, how to discuss with people that you don't know. So the training in ICRC in these kind of things was very, very useful. And I suggest to any diplomats, if you can, go and a few years in ICRC, because you learn many things that they can help you in your life as a diplomat and as a mediator. But then, just as I said, as I would have done in a case like ICRC, I said we need a plane, or we need to go there. And our first base, because La Cama said I'm in Gorongosa, it was of course to go to Gorongosa. Gorongosa was very difficult because it was really at that time full of army and so on. was not really like the situation of today, and it was basically impossible to find where to sleep. So we asked the Gorongosa Park to support us, and we landed in Beira, then by car to the park, and they opened the park for us, basically. We were in the restaurant, there was at the restaurant also, in reality, quite comfortable till that moment. And then we started a week where we were calling La Cama. He was answering to us, so he was answering to me, because I was the one having the contact directly with him. And every day was very strange, like a bit in a movie. Was telling to us, okay, you wake up at 5, you take the car, you go to the city of Villa Gorongosa, and at that kiosk there will be a person that will jump in the car with you, will take you somewhere. I said, fine, okay. First day, go, wake up at 5, drive into Villa Gorongosa, pick up the guy. No way, we were turning around, just turning around really. And at the end of the day, back to 1 day, 2 day, 3 days. It was quite exhausting at the end. All the way we were all asking about what he would like from us. He would like to talk to us or not. Every day like that, pick up the guy. So, and then one day, it was after 7 days more or less that we were there. It's strange, even if you are in a comfortable situation, it's exhausting after a while. Because you stay in a restaurant with your people around, and we look at us, so what you know. And Eduardo Namborete, that was Renamo, basically, he had also no clue. So the last day, basically, La Cama called, and in this time he said to me, no, today is different. Today you want to wake up at 5, just wake up only at 6. I said, thank you, very kind. And then he said, you go again, the same place, and there will be a person and you go. So when we arrived there was not anymore the same person. It was just a young boy that was something like 14 years old. He entered into the car and he was not speaking English, was speaking a local language, and he addressed the driver in quite a strange way, and I understood that the driver and the boy, they knew each other. Then we understood that the cars that we were renting, in reality, the rent-a-car agreed with the La Cama to put his own drivers. It was not the drivers of the rent-a-car. So this boy and the driver, they started to discuss, and we left Villa Gorongosa, and we started to go in a totally different direction, completely different direction than the other days. And we arrived in a village. We started to see, we pass, after a while we passed a checkpoint of the army. It was the last checkpoint. The army was, of course, informed that we were going there. And from that point, that was the famous point that the president usually was saying, from there I cannot protect you. And we said, what? We entered into the bush completely with the car. There was no road, just straight into the trees. I was asking myself, where is going? This guy is crazy. And after half an hour driving into the bush, we started to see soldiers, of course. We understood that was the Renamo side. Then we arrived in a village, and from that village they took us out, the small group of mediators, and they asked us to walk for more or less 7 hours in the bush. And then, out of the blue, La Cama appeared. But it was tough. The walk was long, then it started to rain, it was complicated, and it was quite, the slope was tough, and after more or less, yes, as I said, 7 hours, we reached more or less a peak and so on, and La Cama was there waiting. So that was the very first meeting with La Cama in the bush, and that was the meeting where La Cama approved at the end this famous paper that was proposing a new setup for a mediation. Was accepting the support of Switzerland, was accepting the back channel, and he accepted the creation of these 2 commissions and the way to work. So the back channel in reality remained something that was secret for 3 years. Officially the process was considered to be more a technical process, where nobody was understanding how the 2 leaders they were speaking. But in reality it was the back channel doing really constantly shuttle diplomacy. Then we as back channel, we ask the two parties, so Lakama and Yusi, to speak directly by phone. It was myself once that they put the phone to Yusi in the end. They said, but he's here at the phone, speak directly to him. And then, but the back channel itself was not known at all. It was disclosed basically 1 month before signing the peace agreement. So all the ambassadors, they had no idea. The international community was not aware that the back channel was existing, but they knew that the commission, they were working and preparing documents and so on, but they were instructed through the back channel. It was not, yeah, that was the way to work. Let's say, me and Eduardo and Nea, we went ahead for all 3 years of the negotiation. Jonathan was supporting them from outside the dialogue because he was very much trusted by Yusi, but he was not anymore traveling with us. But with Nea, probably we travel 40 times in the bush before getting an agreement signed. In the meantime, Lakama died. Usufu Momade took over. That was quite a critical moment, of course, because everything could be really fall apart in a way, because nothing was signed. You know, it was also interesting the way we proceed in these 3 years. In reality, we were implementing already part of the agreement without having signed the agreement. You know, for instance, the revision of the constitution was signed in the 25th, if I'm not wrong, of May 2018, and the peace agreement was still not signed. So it was, in terms of really, let's say, modality or way to do, it was quite different and new compared to any other process where you maybe negotiate and you sign after. In the case of this peace process in Mozambique, we decided to implement before signing lots of issues, because there was no other way to do. You know, the two parties, they were very skeptical, having passed through a process that failed. They were very skeptical in signing any paper. So it was impossible to put them or to commit, to ask them commit on something, sign something. No way. You know, all the process of ceasefire, of withdrawing the army was done only based on trust on the mediators and trust on the two parties. At the beginning, the trust was more, Yusi was trusting the mediator, Lakama was trusting the mediator, but there was still no trust between the two. That was very clear. If the mediators, they were saying, let's do it please, because it's useful for, this was done. So it was building really the trust step by step by implementing confidence building measures, one after the other, but without having anything really signed. And quite, you know, the very first document signed, of course, was the revision of the constitution, that's true. But the real document signed, the very first one, was the official cessation of the hostility on 1st of August 2019, after 3 years of negotiation. And as I said, the year before, when Lakama died, having nothing in our hands and being always still secrets in a way, I could say, music could have said, okay, fine, Lakama died, the problem is solved. And we could have really disappeared without nobody knowing that there was a peace process ongoing. That was quite, I would say, shaking at the end. But I have to admit that we have to acknowledge and really see the strong leadership of President Yusi at that moment. He was very firm. He was, the first thing he said to me, Mirko, after going to the funeral of Lakama, you go to Beira and you meet Usufu Momade straight. So I went to Beira, I met Usufu Momade. Momade was, of course, still was quite a big confusion. And there Momade, he decided to follow. Say no, because what probably is also important that you know is that we tried to rescue Lakama, but we were informed too late. We hired an helicopter, we hired an airplane that came from Johannesburg. We tried to get from Beira an helicopter to go to the bush and rescue him really. And he died more or less 7 o'clock in the morning, and we arrived at 11 o'clock. But Lakama, that understood that it was close to leave, at least they told me very clearly, he around in the morning, early morning, he called his small group of trusted people, and he asked to write a paper that was addressed to me. And the paper was requested to be given to the president, and he was requesting me also to sign as a commitment that paper, but I signed after he died. And in that paper, basically, there was very, very, very well written that Renamo would have been committed to continue the process, and it was clear that the process should have ended by disarming everybody. It was a very small paper written by hand, and it was then delivered to President Nyusi, and President Nyusi followed. He said, no, we will go ahead, and Yusufu Momade also, of course. So the people in the bush, they were, despite of the fact that Lakama died, they were really very much committed with what Lakama left behind. And so the process could continue. Revision of the constitution was approved in 25th of May 2018. We went ahead negotiating the military agreement. This was more tough as a negotiation because Lakama was not anymore there. Inside, we started to see, inside Renamo, the fact we started to see new wings, in a way, fighting each other and so on. As normal, the leader left, but Lakama was not a normal leader. It was a very top-down. It was myself, nobody else. So you can imagine when then he left, there was, of course, different interests, different faction and so on. In the last year of the negotiation between 2018 and 2019, when we signed the peace agreement, that year was very, very intense. Because Yusufu Momade was still not enough strong to impose himself like Lakama. Because Lakama died, internally, people, they started to be more scared about ending the fight. They were scared about what will be next. These soldiers, as I said at the beginning, they were not soldiers that they were just called in 2000. They were there since 94, can you imagine? So we were surprised to understand that lots of them, in reality, they stayed after the peace agreement of 92 in the military bases. And some, they were not seen. You know, it was quite amazing. When we were disarming these people, I remember some soldier, one soldier in particular, that was discussing with a colleague that was preparing the ID card for him. She was telling to him, but do you think that my family will recognize me? And my colleague said, but what do you mean? How many years is that? But it's 27 years. And the family was just at 80 kilometers far. See, what he said is 80 kilometers far, and you are 27 years that you are here. Of course, this was the instruction, they said. This was the instruction, but you understand how they were trusting Lakama. This was the instruction, and therefore they were staying there.
Two questions before we take a break. How did you build trust with the different parties, and how did you get them to trust each other?
Look, the trust started really first. This is my also advice to any mediator, you know. Don't paint the situation better than what it is. Be honest. You build the trust when you say to the people where you are, and what is the task and where we are going. You know, sometimes I saw, and we tried also sometimes, I have to be honest, to paint the situation a bit better. Or to force a decision because it was convenient for us. But it was easier for us and not so easy maybe for them. So I think that you build the trust first really by being honest. And to be, at the end of the day, is tough because I can tell you that with President Nyusi, the negotiations sometimes they were very tough, and we finished out of the office more than one time. Really kick out of the office because it was Not happy, of course, because we were not telling him what he wanted, or we were honest in saying to him, your army is not doing the job, or your army is the problem, and I remember really one time telling to him something that he was not aware. You know, he was getting, because you have to understand that if inside Renamo there was people that they were hardliner and maybe working against the agreement, in the other side the same. So the army was not super in favor of just leaving these people out, and that's, you know, I understood then, you know, I spent sometimes also myself in the army, but never in such a condition. And soldiers are very particular subjects, in a sense. You know, you fight to get a position. In that fight, your friend died. And then we ask you, withdraw from that position. And you ask yourself, what's that? So we are withdrawing now when we can win, maybe? And so all these kind of things are very complicated with combatants. Therefore, I can tell you also, combatants, they never become good politicians, you have to be honest. Because they are not very keen for compromise. Veterans, is very difficult to discuss with them any solution, because particularly when they win, is really winner takes all. Why I have to share? This is one of the issues that is complicated in the dynamics of a peace process when you deal really with combatants, because it's normal at the end, you know, you fight, you fought, you died, you are almost there to win, and arrives the mediator from Switzerland and say, withdraw. What's that? So you can imagine the reaction of the army in the field when we ask President Nyusi, please withdraw the army from Gorongosa and let's create sort of buffer zone that we control, we just control together. That was a fight, and there we were really kicked out from the office straight, saying, "What? You are destroying my country." Remember, President Nyusi telling us, "You are destroying my country. What are you doing?" They said, "But you see, how you would like to tell him in a different manner? There is no." I remember that day. It was 4th of no, it was even worse. I think it was a Friday 13, and. We presented to President Nyusi a plan. It was 2017, yes, January 2017, where we presented a plan to withdraw the army from Gorongosa. And we were kicked out of the office in a few minutes. He said, go home. And that time was also difficult because, you know, I was called to come to Mozambique urgently because Nyusi wanted to speak to me, but at the same time my wife was in Switzerland that just delivered my second kid, and I came back, discussed this point out of the office, and I remember I was planning to pack my stuff and go back to the airport, and I remember a phone call from Nyusi saying, "Where are you?" I said, I'm here. I'm packing, going home because my wife. And then he said, "No, you are not going home. We see each other on Monday." And then we went back and we restarted. We resumed from where we were. We said, "Okay, Excellency, the question is, how to withdraw? I don't ask you to withdraw in nothing, but how we withdraw the army, making sure, because of course, I have to admit, when I asked him to withdraw, I was not thinking at the problem of the soldiers. But during the weekend, I was asking, what is the problem of this guy in withdrawing the army? And then I called a friend that at that time was in Colombia, working for the process in Colombia. You see that sharing with two processes is good. And the man said to me, "But Mirko, of course, he's concerned. Because, you know, they got the position there. Now they are not far from catching the man. They lost men, they lost people. So how you go and explain to the people you lost your friends and now withdraw when you are very close to and then that is the problem. So you have to find a way that everybody, you have to find a sort of win-win situation where, and so there we invented then a body that was then working for years, that was the joint monitoring team. We put in place basically a joint monitoring team that was, you know, for instance, the position of the army that was released, or a way that the army was withdrawing, was not just left like that and taking over by Renamo. It was, we put in place groups of joint team Renamo and army, in order that we created a sort of belt that was secured, controlled by the joint military, the joint monitoring group. And that was, in a way, a good solution for both, also for Newsy to accept to withdraw the army. But at the end, when you say how we build the trust by fighting, by really fighting as mediators in keeping our position, being just honest, not trying to painting the and really bringing them together by all the time saying, okay, we do this, try to do that. It was really taking and giving in a way. But in between, as mediators, we were really the one being the guarantee in a way that was. And at the end, you know, when they understood that we were committed, really committed, and that we had no agenda part of peace, and that we were honest, because the discussion was also tough with Nakama sometimes, of course. He was shouting to me at the phone and so on. They, you know, this honesty was really probably one of the trigger that was saying, these guys, they are really with us. And they understood that we were not in one side or the other side. And therefore, but I think not too much to teach to any mediators, but being honest and committed, I think is really the first, the start of building the trust between you and the parties.
And I think you showed that commitment by the 7 days of waiting.
Absolutely.
And around
I can tell you that we show, and particularly also myself, I show the commitment to the people, to President Newsy particularly, and also to Nakama, by sometimes fighting like my ministry. Because, you know, it's not totally easy. When you have a government involved inside the peace process, what probably is the misunderstanding of the government is about the role of an ambassador. An ambassador in general is obliged to share any information and any document to the capital, of course. But at that moment, myself, I was not just the ambassador of system, I was the mediator. And when my headquarters tried to convince me to share, for instance, some documents, I refused. But I started a fight that was, of course, in President Newsy then was informed, not by me directly, but by Nia, said, my God, this guy is close to be fired by this ministry because he's not ready to share anything. And then I think that Newsy said, this guy is a man that we can trust. And it was honestly a big fight that caused me quite problems really inside my ministry for quite a year, for quite a few years, to be honest, and still today a bit, I have to say. Because you know, I can understand, it's strange, no? It's a bit an hybrid situation, no? Maybe probably today, thinking back, I would say that if you are an ambassador, maybe your ministry should suspend you, support you, and you are just a mediator. I don't know. But at that time, in my case, it was not done in that way. Therefore, actually then, the years that I spent after as personally involved with the Secretary General was wonderful. Because the Secretary General was totally trusting me and not asking me anything, understanding that my role was exactly that one. Was the one in between the parties, and Antonio Guterres, that frankly speaking, we can criticize for many things maybe, in that was a man of really wisdom, really. And he said, no, you know what you have to do it, I have nothing to teach you or no instruction to give you. That was a period of where really I had full capacity and I had to fight nobody. But during the 3 years of mediation, it's true that the situation between me and my ministry was difficult because myself, I was really committed with the process. But by the way, I was also managing the embassy. It's not that I was turning the fingers. but I had these two acts, ambassador of Switzerland, which was useful because being the ambassador of Switzerland, nobody was thinking that I was also mediating. Which was good, honestly. But it was tough because my days, they were very long. I was arriving home every day at 10, 11 o'clock, seeing my kids, and so it was, yeah, it was a tough but very rewarding period. And that way to probably lead and manage was also the parties they were appreciating at the end. The personal issue, let's say, or the question with my ministry was never really put on the table, but I know perfectly that Nia was distributing information. This guy will be fired soon. Thank you.
Start by asking, did you work with the regional international organizations during your time as a mediator?
During the time of the mediation, really, as I said, we created this international contact group, which was a group of countries that they were requested to accompany the process. In that group, I was the president of the contact group, as Switzerland. We had inside the United States, we had the UK, Norway, Botswana, China, and who else? I think it's all probably, yes, this country, and the European Union, of course. That group was created beginning of 2017 and went ahead till signing the peace agreement in 2019. In that period of time, of course, there was no other really there was no other international organization involved, also because the idea or the principle of the process was to keep the mediation itself through the back channel secret, of course. What was public was, as I said, the two commissions, so the military commission and the decentralization commission, and this track of the process in a way was supported by the contact group. That is what. But we were not necessarily directly in contact with SADC or any other organization in the region. And also the UN at that time was not at all involved into that process.
So I think I will skip the question number 2 because you have already mentioned it. In your opinion, how has SADC's presence in the mediation efforts has impacted the conflict dynamics?
Yeah, look, after the mediation directly, of course, there was these 5 years of implementation of the agreement. I think that there is just a small brackets. I think people, they misunderstand what is the implementation. You know, we believe always that there is, therefore probably the process in Mozambique is quite unique in that sense. In a sense that the 3 years of negotiation, they were not just ending, they continued then with the 5 years of implementation in reality, where I can tell you that implementing an agreement, I can tell you today, is equally difficult than signing. People, they believe signing is nice because there are, you know, the press and everybody's happy. And then we leave the implementation to the workers like if it's peanuts. I don't know, frankly speaking. In my opinion, is at least equally tough, the implementation, than just the mediation And at that time, we in a way when we started the implementation, my role changed. I was not anymore the ambassador of Switzerland, but I was appointed personally by the Secretary General for the implementation of the peace agreement. There, of course, the process became public in a way. This move from the bilateral relation in a way, Switzerland-Mozambique, because it was Switzerland before just supporting, and moving to the multilateral was, of course, very well done in a sense that this move gave credibility to the agreement by involving the United Nations. That was the wise decision of the Secretary General, because by stepping in was directly recognizing the goodwill of the agreement in a way. is saying. They did this without us, but now we take over because we trust that agreement. But quite smart at the end, the move, because what the United Nations, you know, and this I think, therefore I'm saying is a model that is interesting, because when you work in a bilateral, just a bilateral relation, is more smart and fast than the whole structure of the United Nations. So the mediation itself, led and supported financially by Switzerland, was easier than having the big machine of the United Nations. But then when the agreement was signed, it was very good then to open to other donors, of course, and done in the way that the Secretary General did, automatically gave credibility to what was done for 3 years. Putting the agreement on the table and say the United Nations, they trust that agreement, therefore there is a personal involvement, and therefore please finance that agreement. And as I said, we never had really trouble in financing. What I said at the beginning, what Kofi Annan told me, be careful, don't make the mistake of leaving without ending the implementation. We were lucky in probably, I would say, all this process in Mozambique, at least the last one, succeeded because we learned from the mistakes of the past. We had good examples in a way, and we tried to do differently. But the question of the financing was really sorted out well because we got the bless of the United Nations and the trust, of course. The donor said, of course, but look, it's a continuity in a way. At that moment, we were not directly in contact with SADC, but we were informing regularly. Independently of the fact that SADC was not directly involved into what we were doing, getting anyway, you know, my opinion, informing just is enough to get the support in a way. It is important. It is important that, you know, having people informed give you more credibility and trust in what you are doing.
I understand that you follow the DRC conflict since it just started, and SADC has been.
Sorry?
You follow the conflict in the DRC.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and SADC has been there since 1998. Do you see its presence in DRC has any impact? Because
Look,
it has been there politically.
Unfortunately, what I told you before, that you have to be honest, is also, you know, I'm a diplomat, but it's difficult to not be honest. You know, and it does not help anybody in painting to you the situation better than what it is. I think that SADC is an organization that needs to be first supported and financed by the countries that they form that organization. Because if you want to be independent, you know, it's not me judging now right or wrong, but if you would like to be independent, first finance yourself. Then ask support, but finance yourself first. Because in that way you give credibility to the organization and you keep your independence. Then any donors can come in and support you, but first do that. Because in that way you are credible first. If you need for almost all your budget to be financed by the European Union, as I think is the case now, I have some concern. But I think there was a precedent saying this before me, I think. Yeah. So I'm not inventing anything. And independently of the president, I think is just logical. No, it's not. If you first make the effort, I can trust you that you have goodwill. But I believe that such kind of organization like SADC, they are useful, absolutely useful. And they need to be supported. But the first one that they need to support SADC is the one creating SADC, being SADC. SADC needs to support itself first. And keep this independence is important. It is important, but not just important, it is important for the credibility of the organization first. And when you ask me if it was effective, don't ask me this kind of question because it's not nice. Because you see the result. It was not. But I'm not saying this with pleasure. I'm disappointed about that because I believe that Africa needs effective institutions. But you don't need in Africa the support of anybody else than you. And if you use the funds properly, you don't need too much money to be effective. Don't believe that you need too much. To finance a secretariat in few meetings, you don't need billions. Because now we speak only in billions. Before in the past it was millions. But now I see that everybody's in billion. When I was kids, million was already so much. Today is nothing. So let's speak about just million is enough. Because now it's billion, everything is in billion. But I'm disappointed in that sense, because it could be an effective organization. I've been working in Sahel, for instance. I felt that ECOWAS was more solid, for instance, than SADC. But that region needs also such kind of strength and organization. For the time being, I cannot see that. That is just the reality.
Okay. I know you understand there's multiple actors who are dealing with the DRC conflict. What do you think they should maybe prioritize when it comes to peace?
I'm, also there, said by Asfis, you will say this guy. What, I should be the one telling to you that the international law needs to be respected and so on. But after years of work, I spent today 17 years in Africa. And I'm working for my ministry since more or less 23, 25 years. And then a few years in ICRC. So I'm not naive, I'm sorry. And I love the law and governance and the respect of everything. But you reach that feeling and sense of respecting institution and law with time. And you need to create a culture for that. Democracy is a nice word, but if you feed your people with democracy in once, you will kill them. Democracy needs to be given by pills, small, creating the condition to then become the example of democracy. Sometimes it doesn't work. And when, we, Western countries, sometimes we are coming to your country teaching you about democracy, when just a few days before we were wild. We were just wild, don't worry. We were not so different. But we forgot. And we forgot also because of generation. Today, I think we have a generation of politicians in Europe that they would like to teach democracy to the world. But they forgot that the uncle and the grandfather was equally corrupted and I don't know what. So, we are not the best teacher. This is what I want to say. And if we want to be good teacher, we have to learn from our mistakes too. And this I have the feeling that sometimes we have this arrogance of teaching, having forgotten completely what we did. Frankly speaking, what we would, because, as a diplomat, I should be silent, of course. But, you have examples of completely, in your country, what should I say? How we can teach you democracy, You just ended apartheid basically 30 years ago, so I'm not here to teach you anything about democracy and rule of law. But when we talk about specifically DRC, in DRC, I've been working there. It's difficult as a context. So many ethnic groups, so many family, and the size of the country is so big. Lack of infrastructure. Kinshasa is so far. Kigali is so close. So it is a matter of governance, of course. It's a matter of resources. But you won't sort out the problem just with the rule of law. I would say that, and by saying this is the border, stay at your home, and there should be sometimes some pragmatic solutions, which are not totally in line maybe today, but they will start to enhance processes that they will succeed. If you would like today in that context to say this is the law, we apply the law, I think you fail. You probably fail. First, you have to know the context. You have to understand, first of all, you have to understand also that borders, they were invented. They were not there. They were totally invented, like in Middle East, you ask yourself this. So they were invented, these borders. So I think it's good first to understand the context, and I'm totally sure that when you understand the concept, you go there, you discuss with people and so on, you can find win-win situation where everybody has his own interest satisfied. But forcing the solution, saying, this is written by the international law that we wrote, by the way, not you. Saying this is the international law you have applied, and then it's maybe a bit rigid. And then, you know, again, I'm the first one telling to you that it is need to be done like that. But also, let's say the application delayed as the democracy impels is probably one of the pragmatic way to get a sustainable solution, I would say. In line with the wishes of the people at the end, not... and you know, you cannot, when we speak about combatants also in DRC, you cannot tell them the peace has gone, finish, go home. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that.
Do you mind, Edward, if I ask a question? I'm just thinking about insider, outsider mediators, and there's two things that you said. The one is the neutrality of the mediator is so important for building trust, and that both parties know that you're not on either side. But would you say that a mediator from SADC or SADC supported is more or less likely to be effective than someone from outside?
First, it would be nice if SADC they agree. So you come already from a difficult situation when you are a mediator from SADC, I would say. And I notice that sometimes SADC is appointing people that they already have quite important background. You know, I do not believe that always is useful to appoint a president, for instance, as a mediator. It's not a guarantee of, I mean, presidents, they have huge experience, but they also have a past that can influence the negotiation then. So, you know, you have super wise people in Africa. You don't have to appoint only presidents. Can put you a list of people that they are wise and they can be mediators for SADC and for whoever, that they are not necessarily former minister or president. There is this idea that having been in the government, you are automatically wise. That's not really always the rule. Wise people, they can be in the street. And they don't be so wise in peace processes where you have to come to a compromise. It's better to, I mean, you have, as I said, we are 9 billion inhabitants. There are only presidents that are wise in this world. And former presidents, they can also retire sometimes, no? I don't know. It's like politicians, why they have to stay in power till 74? You are young enough to also to manage your country, no? So it's also a matter, stay calm and go home, no?
Yeah.
So I believe that being a good mediator, it's, you know, being a good politician or a good former president or a good former minister or whatever, it does not imply that automatically you are a good mediator. You know? It's not really the case. But I saw it's really something that happened really in the last 20 years. Now it's increasing. You know? Every time there is a conflict, we put the former minister, the president, this one, to mediate. I don't believe that is absolutely needed. And sometimes it's not needed at all. It is not useful. Because what I said, because of your past count at the end.
Do you have any further questions?
Yeah. Previously you mentioned of to enhance the effectiveness of independence of the SADC, they need to make sure they finance, the countries finance the...
It's not only financing, there is a need of agreement, but financing is important.
Do you have any comment or recommendation on their strategies towards the DRC conflict?
Look, in the case of DRC, again, I think that SADC should represent the position of Africa first in that conflict, because we don't have to be naive. We are not just trying to build peace in Congo because we would like the population to be safe and have a future. It's because that region is probably globally one of the regions where you have still the biggest resources that you can exploit. And that is the future of Africa. So SADC should care about that first and express that opinion. Because, you know, plans that or papers that they plan to exploit that resources, they need to come from you first, not from anybody else. And I think SADC, the role of SADC should be that one, to protect the role of Africa first in this kind of agreements and this kind of deal, before anything. There should be in that conflict, I still don't see the position of Africa in that conflict, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I still don't see, when I read anything about DRC and Rwanda, I see the position of the United States, I see the position of Europe, I see the position. Show me the position of SADC. Then I comment. If you give me the position of SADC, I mean, I couldn't find for the time being. But I know what Europe would like, I know what the USA would like. I don't know what you would like.
Yeah, maybe just as a final closing question, you mentioned what would not make a good mediator. What would make a good mediator? What are the qualities?
Humbleness.
Sorry?
You need to be humble. Whoever you are, you can be, you know, one of the most humble person I met was Kofi Annan. Was a bit like your Mandela, you know, not arrogant. And you know, meeting myself that at that time was nothing. He wanted to meet me. I said, I remember that was Neo organizing the meeting in Geneva. He said, but why you would like to meet me? I don't know him. But Neo said, but he knows you. He said, you know, I think a good mediator must be humble. And you know, this Nia is Nia, my colleague. She said many times something that I found quite right. You know, you have to be grateful that the parties they let you enter into the mediation. It's an arrogance to believe that I'm there because I'm good. You know, when a mediation is sometimes it's not a negotiation. You know, mediating the peace between two countries is not like negotiating the agreement of trade. And so there are the other aspect into the mediation is something that is sometimes getting into emotion, personal. You know, when a president is shouting you, it's not because he's calculating to shout you, it's because it's coming from here. When you ask him, withdraw your troops, he's feeling the people that they died and say, what do I answer to them now? Because you would like, so he said this from the heart. So mediating is different than negotiating an agreement. Mediating is listening to the people first, entering into their life and understanding why you don't want peace, why you do that, and proposing them an alternative to fighting. In a negotiation, you know, you can come out with no result, it's no harm. But in a peace process, when you come out with no result, people they die the day after. So this is something that people they have to understand. So you have to be humble and you have to be thankful that they let you enter and talk to them and explain to them. And I think really the first quality need to be really humble, really, as I said. Being there first, listen first, and never judge, never judge. You know, it's difficult, but people they were saying to me, for instance, when Lakama died, Lakama was so good, and Yusufu Momade is incompetent. It's not the same today. If you ask me, I cannot say Lakama was better than Yusufu Momade. You know, Yusufu Momade did something that Lakama was incapable to do. Yusufu Momade surrendered. Yusufu Momade gave really back the guns, every single guns. Yusufu Momade moved a party that was a military group to a party that is only a party. So he was capable to give up really the military wing. Politically is huge. Politically is huge. Because Lakama at the end, I mean, I don't want to diminish Lakama, but just to understand, you know, what Yusufu Momade has done is massive. Politically speaking, he was capable to say finish. And listen to the speech of Yusufu Momade in Gorongosa, really, when we signed, that sentence are important, is in the web, I can send it to you. Listen to that sentence when he said that the time of guns is finished. I mean, now I'm resuming, but you have to he's in Portuguese. He's saying exactly that, but he did it. It was not just words. He did it. For 5 years he was fighting against his own people to give back the guns, to hand over the guns in the real sense, and to become just a political party, not a fighting, and that is, frankly speaking, something, find people that they did that, not so many. So when they say to me, Sufu, Lacaba was a great leader. Of course, when you have the guns, it's easier, but when you don't have it. So I was happy that President Chapo appointed Sufu Momade in this body that is Conselho do Estado, we say, the State Council in Mozambique, which is a body of the state, which the president is a consultative body of wise people that the president is using in case of whatever, discussing any problem. Because he has the right to be there, Sufu Momade. He has the right to be there.
Well, thank you. Let's end it there. I think we've taken enough of your time, Ambassador, but thank you very much
Thank you.
for being willing to engage with us.